My name's Simon Bailey. I'm a host tonight of the 2018 edition of the Business of Indie Games Online Summit. I'm here with Gayle, who is the CEO and founder of Altered Gene. He's a very experienced developer. He's worked at EA. He's been a producer at Square Enix. He's worked at Microsoft. He's also an ambassador for Special Effect and a trustee for Games Aid, and a supporter of the games industry outreach to schools. He's highly recommended, he's influential in the games business, and I'm really excited to talk to him tonight. And we're going to be discussing how to keep your studio open, you know, particularly under difficult conditions, something that we've all had to live with in various phases, or most of us anyway. So Des, welcome. So glad to have you here.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So I'll dive straight in. One of the things you talk about, and I've seen you on YouTube as well talking about this, is to work out your ultimate vision for your studio. So there are various strategies that we have when thinking about a studio, you know, for example, using work for hire to supplement, you know, and then use the profits for that work for hire to fund your own game. What's your ultimate plan? What's the strategy for Altered Gene?
Yeah, it's changed somewhat, but yeah, when we started 5 years ago, the ultimate plan was to be 15 to 20 people strong in an office, you know, a hive of creativity. But I soon realized that going down that path was actually quite expensive. Like the startup costs for that, you know, quite prohibitive for indie developers, basically. So yeah, I quickly changed and thought, okay, what other model could I use to still kind of be a little bit more elastic like that? Because obviously I've been through some redundancies myself, so I didn't want to go through that process. But I thought, well, how can we make it so that people work on a project and they know at the end of it that we're going to be done? So I looked towards the film industry for a bit, and I liked what they did for different films. And as I learned more about it, about the funding models and stuff, like it's absolutely crazy, like how the different rights of IP are assigned. I was like, okay, I don't want to go that far, but I think having a core team, a small core team, and then growing through contractors, that's kind of the plan now, and it's worked okay. And as you mentioned about going using the work for hire model, so what I did was I essentially pimped myself out as a producer freelance, and used the income from that to start funding some original IP. So yeah, we used that to, what did we make? Oh yeah, Hyperstellar SV on the mobile. It's a free-to-play game that we launched in 2016. So that works quite well. You know, we ramped the team up. We had at peak, we were 6. Released the game. Everyone was like, great, contract's over. Thank you very much. See you later. And then yeah, we watched the whole $90 trickle in from Google Play, and yeah, started basically reinvest that for the next game. So Red Tone Runner is due out in August this year.
Is that free to play as well?
It will be, yeah. My thinking behind that was I just wanted reach. There's loads of stuff that I don't know about free to play, but I do have some assumptions. And for me, learning from a big data set was more important than actually generating a lot of revenue. So we've taken the learnings that we've got from Hyperstellar, we've put them into Red Zone Runner, and hopefully we'll get both this time. We'll get more than $90 and a lot more information.
That's the big thing, is getting those data sets at the moment and then analysing them, because some of these games can have quite a long tail if you can do it right.
Yeah, it's an American football game, so it's very seasonal. And we were going to release it this year, but we missed our date for the Super Bowl. So there's absolutely 0 point in launching it between February and August, because the off season and no one cares.
Are you still doing work for hire?
Yes. So yeah, so I'm still doing production work for hire. So I've got 2 clients at the moment, which is going quite well. But we also kind of this year we've signed our first kind of actual development work for hire as well. So we're just working on a small advertising project, which is just about right for us. I don't want to go down the road of doing big PC or console projects, just because even though I've got console experience, that the rest of the team haven't. So that's going to be a difficult project to manage. And also, I'm kind of a little bit averse to getting into that cycle. So, you know, the bigger projects we do takes more time, and this presents two problems. So one, we stop working on our own stuff completely until that project's done, or we take a massive risk and double the team size to keep working on the original IP and do the work for hire.
If the projects are small, then they're less of a distraction from focusing on your own IP. And then, of course, also you don't let the customer down by being too focused on your IP, right?
Yes, and with my work for as a producer, work for hire stuff, I've seen that. You know, we've worked with a different agency, and you can see where reading between the lines where their resource management is affecting delivery of the product. And yeah, it's tough when you're working with another producer. You know, it's very hard to bluff them because they're used to doing the same tricks as they're trying to pull.
It's a hard lesson, but you do learn to be honest and open with your customer in the games business in the end, don't you? You know, otherwise you risk the project getting canned.
Yes, this too.
And is it your studio cash flowed from the customer money, or do you have other funds that you draw on?
Yeah, so no, it's literally just through me screwing away work for hire money. I've been quite fortunate to have a nice enough career, you know, and it's a really nice company. So I've, you know, got some money squared away, and made some really good contacts, which makes life a lot easier. But this year's a growth year for us, and we are deep in talks to an investor this time to just make life a bit easier, because a mixture of inexperience and bloody mindedness. I didn't really want to take investment on. You know, I was like, no, I want to do it myself. I want to have all the money myself, and you know, just do it the hard way. But I'm getting old now, so you know, I need to start working smart, not hard, or too hard. Yeah, you have to work hard. Yeah, no. So we're deep in talks about that, which is really good, really positive. And I just wish I did it, maybe not right at the start, but I think maybe at least 2 years ago. I wish I was at this stage 2 years ago, because it's not as it's not, you know, it's not as scary as I thought it was. You know, you hear one or two horror stories, and you're like, okay, you pull back a bit and think, I'll keep plodding along. You know, better the devil you know. But you know, it's going really well. And this year is really exciting for me because we are actually in a position to qualify for Creative Europe funding. Because one of the caveats for that is you need to have a previous narrative game, which Hyperstellar Original didn't qualify, but we've released Hyperstellar Fusion now, and that does qualify. So yeah, we should hear about that in 2 months' time.
When you're having the investor conversations, sounds like that, you know, you said they're going well and you're not experiencing the horror stories that people do talk about. What's been important in the discussions to keep them balanced and keep them fair? And how are the negotiations? Are they, what are you learning from these experiences?
So I'll talk a little bit about the horror story. So I spent a little bit of time in traditional tech land out of games for a bit, and the horror stories were, you know, they met an investor early on, gave away too much equity, and then fast forward 3 years, they don't own their own company anymore. So I was like, oh, okay, that sounds really bad. And the easy way to get into that is to have that knowledge imbalance. So yeah, I made a couple of friends in the banking world, and you know, they taught me, you know, kind of, you know, about equity splits and dilutions and stuff. You're like, oh, okay, well, fair enough, that makes sense. And they also told me, don't be seduced by dumb money. And what they meant by that was, you know, there's loads of rich people in the world who need to get money, you know, out of their bank account into someone else's to be tax efficient. However, when you're looking for investment, it's not only about the money. Like, you know, you need maybe a black book that comes with that, or expertise in a certain area. Like if you move to VR, you want someone who's done stuff like that before. Yes, so so the important things for me now were just literally, you know, how much equity we're giving up, and how it's structured, and essentially once the game is shipped, when do we start seeing £1 of revenue? They're the key features for me. And yeah, who we're talking to has been very clear and open about it. They've told us how they're going to raise the money, and just basically how the structure is going to work. Like not just now, but in 1 or 2 years' time. And then we've worked together on what that means for sales projections. So, you know, I don't have a target. I've got to sell 2 million copies. It's significantly less than that, which in this market is something that's achievable now. Because yeah, you don't want to do that either. You know, you see all these big dollar signs up front, but then you don't realise how many units you have to shift to pay that off.
The games business is a hit-driven business, so inherently, you know, risky. You know, in the same way films are, I suppose. With a film, you know, you can have a big name. How have you managed to like reassure the investors, you know, in the face of that risk?
So I'm glad you brought that up, actually. So I believe that star power is a thing in video games as well. You know, it's been well documented for years that, you know, we make more money than film and TV. So you know, video games entertainment is big business. So with the PC console game that we're working on, yeah, we've got star power in the form of voice artists, and I haven't got her yet, but I'm looking after a very high profile programmer. So this is going to help. So assuming I can get her, she will bring a massive Twitter following, you know, which is what we need. We need people with reach. And the same with the VO artists. So they've worked on, so one lady's worked on a very cool retro game that has a core fan base that's still relatively active. I mean, you know, they've still got more followers than I have. And it's a very good fit. So it's a sci-fi game, so it's a very good fit for us. And kind of what I'm doing now is, when we're talking about contracts, is just kind of locking contractors in to help with marketing and promotion later. So it's not just, oh yeah, come and record a few lines, see you later, game's going to be out in 3 years. It's like, no, like these are the events we're planning on being at. This is what would be relevant when we're going to announce who the stars are. Be great to have you along. Can we kind of pencil you in for these dates and stuff like that? So yeah, so star power, that's definitely a thing, I believe. And then also, I think they're quite happy with my years of experience. Like, so this is year 20 for me now. It's been a long time. Thank you, too kind. So yeah, you know, I've seen some things to know a lot of things, and I'm still young enough to learn a few more. And luckily now, like everyone who I started in the industry 20 years ago, you know, they've kind of risen up at various different places that can help me now. So, you know, I've got contacts at all the platform holders. You know, investors always like to see that. And I've got, so yeah, so going back to how we staff the studio. So when we reach out to these contractors, you know, I've got a list of professionals that I've worked with, you know, before and have a relationship with. So all those things just slowly just tick the risks off. Like, oh, okay, cool. They've worked together before. So, you know, they're not going to quit after 2 or 3 months unless something catastrophic happens. And I guess the other important thing is the game idea. Like, they think the game idea is good, which is nice.
Are you planning on publishing it yourself?
Not everywhere. So yeah, we just kind of discussed that at the moment. I think when our launch window is, things might change, but there's certain platforms where we're like, we're 100% going to a publisher. But I think we're probably going to go with more than one. We're going to split it up by territory, because at the moment there's no one publisher that would be interested in us, and vice versa, that can control all three territories. And by that I loosely mean the US, Europe, and Asia. So yeah, we might put two with one publisher and put one with another one.
That sounds like a really great approach, because hopefully you can get an advance from each territory and put together a package that way.
Yeah, totally. So the strategy for us is obviously to raise as much private money as we can before we go with our hands stretched out for a publisher. It's just easier to get a more favourable deal if they put less development money in.
I also find that you can, if you can fund the product yourself, you'll get a better deal, because you've got more polish in the product, and the product can be clearly seen to be, an excellent opportunity. And that you've also reduced the risk for the publisher, because they can see it working and play it.
100%, yeah. And so go back to my last role at Square Enix when I was on the collective program. Yeah, so that was a really good experience for me, because I got to see what the publishers were thinking from this side of the table. So, like, I've got quite a high risk profile, like risk tolerance. So, if I see a design on paper, I'll be like, okay, that's a really cool idea. I'd be more than happy to fund, 2 or 3 months of prototyping to get that physical, and then make a decision yes or no then. Sadly, my line of investment doesn't matter to most people. So I knew that. I knew we had to make something first, and we used some free assets on the Unreal Marketplace, and we just got the fun down. You were just like, okay, this is the type of game I want to make. Does it work? Is it fun? Can we do it, basically? So yeah, we've got that basic premise, which is quite nice. Initially, when we were pitching it around, I was a little bit too optimistic. So I kind of was looking at the process through my eyes, where I can see some squares and triangles moving around on the screen, and getting the feedback in the controller, and still make a decision on the game. But that's not a widespread talent that people have. So yeah, we were getting a lot of feedback about the art. Just like,
Yeah.
We sent mock-ups too. It's like, this is what we want it to look like, but we don't have the money, so now we're doing this. So yeah, I did have to go and find the money to fund the art for that, which was, I'm still a bit grumpy about it, but at the end of the day, these are the hoops you have to jump through. But yeah, so and yeah, exactly what you're saying. So we're trying to go into these different pots of grant funding where there's not really strings attached to get that far down the line. So we still have quite a few known unknowns on our list to get through, and the unknown list, it's not as big, but it's bigger than I'd like. So we want to get to a publishing stage where that list is tiny, and yeah, like you said, it's more attractive for the publisher to use.
There are so many hoops. I mean, sometimes even when you jump through all the hoops, they still can't make up their mind, So it's that just comes with the creative territory, I think. I mean, I've certainly spent $250,000 on a demo, and then canned it. These days, it doesn't cost so much to make the demo. For doing something for PS2 or something, it's all much more reasonable, and you can outsource a lot. Do you outsource the art or anything like that?
When it's going from like prototype to then go from concept to prototype, we keep it close. I do some scribbles, and then I get one of my regular contractors to be like, oh, just make this a little bit prettier, so I can show a few more people who are gameplay focused but can't see past the art before they'll test the gameplay. but after that, yeah, once we go into like full on proof of concept, yeah, we farm the art out. Have one central person here, just managing the stuff coming in.
Yeah, is that like an art director?
Yeah, essentially, yeah.
One of the things that I heard about you is that you're really good at negotiating the work for hire contracts, that you have certain stipulations in those contracts. How's it been working with new clients, and what kind of terms do you need from the client to maintain the cash flow and keep ahead?
It's rule 101 of negotiation, right? Like, both sides need to win. And, I think I'm quite good at getting to the point of what the other side wants to win. I mean, we're fairly laid back. Like, it's simple maths for us. Like, if money is more than money out, then we're fine. So, I guess the two biggest points that I've got a stickler for is the feedback cycle, because that can blow your schedule like well out of the water if that's not defined up front.
And subsequently your profit margin, right?
Yeah, exactly. It obviously depends who you're talking to, but we tend to go for 5 days feedback. And the important thing about that is what happens when you get to the end of the feedback process. So the line in the contract that we have is, if feedback is not provided in 5 days, it's assumed that the work is approved. That's one that you argue about for ages, because the bigger companies know they're slow, and but they also want control, right? It's their product. That's why they're paying you to make it. So they know that if they're slow, that if the work just carries on, they don't get a chance to feedback on that again. And we've lost some contracts over it, which is fine. Like, this is just the how business works. But yeah, we've got to protect our interests. Or
do you find with the bigger companies that you mentioned that they'll pay more if they want longer feedback?
Sometimes. Yeah, sometimes. I mean, yeah, that's the other side of the negotiation, right? It's just if they won't agree to that feedback loop, then it's just like, okay, we tend to add maybe 25% to the overall project cost, because it's massive risk. And then actually there's a part B to that. So it's what happens, how we deal with change management. So again, when they miss a gate, obviously we have the ability to delay delivery date, which is obvious, and it can't always be fixed by money. So one of my favourite analogies is you can't have 9 women make a baby in 1 month. So some things just take time, and one of the biggest pushbacks we get is, okay, we'll give you more money, throw more resource at it, and get it done. It's just like, well, this won't help. Like, I can't have 2 artists at one computer making one thing. Like, it just doesn't work.
Some coding tasks are also dependent on each other, aren't they?
Yeah. So the second point I was to make was payment terms. This was a very steep learning curve for me, but some of the massive companies have 90-day payment terms. I didn't even know that was a thing. Fortunately, that hasn't turned up on a contract on my lap. But what we always try and push for is we try and make it so we get payments in on 14-day terms, but we make payments out on 30-day terms. So it just gives us a little window in case we need it, basically.
Just to cash flow the business. Right?
Yeah, of course. And statistically, we've had mostly good payers. I think 1 or 2 companies, no, 3 actually, always pay late. And it's not because they're being horrible, it's because they need to put the money through such a massive machine, and sometimes they just have strict payment dates. Some companies only make payments twice a month, and it's only sort of like newer, more flexible companies that can make payments any day they want. So, but yeah, there's 2 things that we always argue over.
Yeah, I mean, I've had that experience myself. I did Young Indiana Jones, and the payment terms. I mean, what a fabulous license. I really wanted to do the project. but the payment terms were 120 days, and that's, you know, it's unbelievable. You know, it's very difficult to live with.
Yeah.
So yeah, so important piece of advice from you, I think, there to get those payment terms in your favour as much as you can. What do you think it takes for a larger studio to consider a smaller indie for work for hire?
You need the moves to align on a fair few things. Obviously, a previous relationship somewhere to get you that in the first place. I think you need to have shipped commercial product. You know, if you haven't done that, then there's no social proof that you can finish and deliver. Then I think so what's been happening recently that I've witnessed is the big studio's got an IP that's a really good fit to some technology that the small studio has. So say I don't know, Titanfall, right? In the traditional space, it's an FPS on high-end consoles and PCs, right? But they want to branch into mobile because there's so many handsets, right? We need to get some of those users. So maybe they don't want to use that as an FPS, but maybe they want to make it as a point-and-click tactical shooter instead. So someone who's made, I know this is a bad example, but maybe something like XCOM or Mario Rabbids, like as a small studio, like that's a good fit for that's a good synergy. The big studio knows what they want. The little studio has delivered it, and essentially, it's an 80% reskin job with 20% game mechanics, right? And then you've just got to go through that approval loop. Do these titans look how we want them to look on the smaller screen? Are we hitting graphical targets, frame rate targets, just stuff like that. So yeah, you need mood to align on a fair few things. And I guess the other option could be for prototyping.
I can hear all those years of external producer experience coming through there, Des.
I'm really lucky. I've worked with some fantastic teams and lovely people, and I mean, obviously things have gone wrong sometimes, but it just all adds to the rings to the notches.
Yeah.
So the other thing is prototyping. So you, as a big studio, if you've been around for a couple of years, you're going to have team members on quite a hefty burn rate. So you don't want, say, a team of 4 or 5 people sitting around camera prototypes where you're going to throw away 90% of them. That turns the cost of those prototypes into hundreds of thousands. But you could find a small indie team, a significantly lower burn rate, who could probably, come up with 5 times the amount of content for at least half the price. So yeah, there's 2 really attractive things where big studios could use smaller teams.
What sort of numbers are we talking there in terms of man months?
Yeah, for prototyping, you could probably go up to between 24 and 30. That's a good range for sort of couple of prototypes. And then for actual bigger projects, so this is the interesting thing. So with good big studios, they'll know that smaller budget doesn't necessarily mean smaller scale, right? So even though I didn't work on Titanfall, you can imagine that taking that FPS game down to a tactical game on mobile is no small feat. You'd want to give a team a good 9-12 months to give that a go. But obviously you'd gate that with milestones, right? So you'd have a couple of KPIs set out. So okay, after 2 months we want to see this, and if it passes or fails based on that, you've got the option to cut out of the project and think, okay, it's not going to work. The big studios tend to call these green lights, but us down here we just they just milestones.
How do you break down those milestones? I know that sort of the phrase gold master is kind of gone now. People talk about soft launching and then hard launching and live op.
So actually breaking down the milestones is So for me, again, it's that negotiation thing. So for the small studio side, I want to be, okay, what am I comfortable delivering? How much of this work do we know versus how much we don't know? And then that is what will sort of make me essentially deliver less per milestone, just so we've got that space in there to handle any problems. Just go off on a tangent. So when I originally came to games, I was traditionally doing waterfall development, but now here at TBoIG we do agile development, just to help with some cases like this. So whenever we've got a contract, we say, okay, right, this is what we can definitely deliver. We might be able to deliver this, and this isn't going to happen in this milestone. And it's tough for the big boys because they're not used to that, and I can appreciate it because I wouldn't want to talk to someone, say, oh, okay, cool, here's 50,000, and not be 100% sure what I'm going to get for that. And the person on the other side of the table, what they're saying is, no, you're definitely going to get something. It's going to be close to what you want, but we just can't say, what this final 20% will be. But yeah, so having actually done it myself, I was like, oh, okay, now I understand how it's useful. And for us on a par, we tend to, well, no, we always over deliver. Like, we always manage to get into that might have column. It's just, that's the way it should be.
When you're talking about waterfall versus agile,
yeah,
do you still use the same approach to sort of reduce risk first?
Yeah, pretty much. If it's just bread and butter stuff, so we've made a couple of endless runners, right? So if someone wants to make an endless runner for them, we know how to make them. We're okay. This is fine. But if they want us to now make a racing game, we'll be like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, this is, we don't do these. So definitely, we definitely go for the basics first. Okay, great, this is what we know, just to get something up and running. And then we start tackling the big chunks. I guess I'm trying to think. The biggest risk for us would be platforms, right? So yeah, mobile PC is no problem for us. But if someone said, oh yeah, Switch is hot and sexy at the moment, can you do a Switch version? We'd be like, oh, okay. We'd probably what sits between mobile PC power wise, so we know we could optimize for it. So we know we do well for that. But in terms of actually doing the build pipeline, and even getting the assets into that pipeline, we would definitely be testing that stuff heavily. Be like, okay, we'll shift the mobile PC stuff backwards a little bit, do the Switch stuff up front, and then obviously, we use Unity and Unreal, so we use engines, so that takes some of the risk out of the equation for us. But once we've sort of like cracked the platform specific stuff, we then roll it back in to be like, okay, great, we can have one core build and then start splitting off branches for that for each platform.
Is there an average sort of percentage that you would spend on platform specifics? So could you sort of safely say, well, 20% of the time, 20% of the budget is going to go on Switch specific stuff, or are you finding cross-platform a lot easier these days?
You just click the make game button, so it just spits out all the versions you need. So
you're telling me it's that easy.
Yeah. we don't have any hard data around that, but I 20% is a fair assumption for a console build for us, because we develop PC first anyway, so we know the core would be running on that. We've got a couple of really dodgy machines in the office, so we don't have any behemoths in there. So
what is the structure of your milestone table then? Do you sort of start with a signature fee, then a prototype?
Obviously, it depends on how much work there is to do, but we always push for a signing bonus or a signing payment, because say the first milestone is in 3 months' time, you've got to do 3 months worth of work. then whatever the approval period is, and then whatever the payment period is. So you do 3 months worth of work and submit it. Say, big publishers, they're probably 10-day approval time. So assuming nothing goes wrong, they pass it, that's 10 days. So plus the 30 days. So you've submitted 3 months worth of work, you won't get paid for that work for another 40 days. So yeah, we always try and get the signing bonus to take us up to that, what is that? Essentially 4-month mark, so that we've got that just sitting there, so we know we don't have to burn past it. And then so after that, each milestone is then the amount matches or exceeds the burn rate. So
in my experience, I've also been able to negotiate milestones based on how much risk they'll reduce. So cool. Alpha would be a particularly big payment.
Yeah. But this is tough. So a developer tried to do that to me back at Square, which is fine. I mean, that's what you're supposed to do. But my job at that point was obviously to be responsible to the business. So even though as a developer myself, I was like, oh, that's fair enough. I had to just switch my mode of thinking to think, okay, think about that in time. So say we get to 50% of the project and we can it. I've then got to report up to my boss and then his boss to say, okay, cool, we've deployed more than 50% of the money. And it's like, they'd be like, whoa, why have you done that? It should be, we should get more of the game and be paying less. From developer perspective, yeah, of course do that. But for our side of things, we're just like, well, you can keep it within 5% of time versus deployed money.
Yeah, I see. Okay, great. Well, that's great for indies to know that calculation as well on the publisher side.
I guess one thing that I have seen change is, there was a lot of back waiting. So obviously alpha and beta are important, but there's a lot of release date payments. Now this, at first glance, looks fine until the release date slips, which you have no contractual control over as a developer. So, you've got a nice chunk of change waiting on when the game ships and hits the stores, but you don't know when that date's going to shift, because we can use a real world example now, right? So everyone's afraid of Rockstar. Quite rightly, they should be. They drop a game, you're not going to sell many copies of your game. So, okay, we need to move our game out of October, put it somewhere else. So with your forecast, you'd be like, oh, I'm expecting money, obviously not in October, but by the time the platform holders distribute to the publisher and it all feeds through, about 3 months later. But now, like that, you've got a month on top of that, and that's a month you haven't accounted for. Again, like I said, it's innocent up front, but yeah, unless you've seen that happen, you'd be like, oh, okay, you wouldn't think to do that. So we place the importance on alpha, because at alpha the game is feature and functionality complete, right? Like you're happy with the mechanics. You're like, okay, that's a lot of risk out of the way. All you're asking from the dev team is, can they deliver the content? Can they churn out the art assets? Versions 4, 5, and 6 of some soldier doing a different animation. That's significantly less risk. However, you still need to ship the game. So there's a chunky wait and beta as well. But then, obviously, that's only 2/3 of the battle, because then you've got to get past QA, and then you've got to get past fallback QA. You're just like, wow, okay. And yeah, as you're well aware, that's the toughest part of game development, is going through that QA churn. And that's where some companies kind of start losing their margin. You get kicked out of fallback QA, well, you shouldn't do more than twice, but if you start going to submissions 3 and 4, that's significant time and effort. And also, from a publisher side, you're probably going to have a clause in there where they're going to recoup the platform fee, submission fee out of your royalties. So yeah,
Yeah. I mean, sometimes you're forced into a third or fourth submission just because there's one bug that you think you got rid of it and you can't get rid of it.
I can do little bits of code, but I'm just glad that like it's not my like profession, because you know, obviously being a producer going through the list, just be like, yeah, you know, having loads of cannot reproduce on there, just like wow, like we can't even get the bug that you said is happening to present itself to us. So how do we know it's fixed? It's just yeah, worst
Yeah,
point in development.
the stuff you're sharing is really valuable about, you know, in terms of how to get from a one-man band or how to get from a small studio to a medium-sized studio. You know, these are the issues, the nitty-gritty coal-face issues that we have.
At various points of my career, you know, people are like, you know what, you could go and work in this industry, work less hard and earn more money. I'm like, yeah, but then I'll be bored. Like, I'm super lucky.
Yeah.
Like, out of my core friend group from school, there's two of us that work in video games, and like, you know, every 3 or 4 months when we meet up, like, we're the only two smiling about work. Like, everyone else hates their jobs. So we're just like, actually, it's not that bad.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and luckily for me, you know, I only have to do sort of like horrific crunch early on in my career.
You're talking about hard work and talking about crunch, and I'd like to go into that into a bit of detail. Just before we do, can I ask you, just on that last point, what sort of legal support do you have? Because clearly it's, you know, that those contracts can be tricky, and you don't just need an ordinary lawyer, you need a lawyer that actually understands the games business and has lost a few battles a few times, you know?
Yeah, 100%. To just personally, I've been lucky to see quite a few contracts, and the brunt of some bad contracts, like on someone else's time. Like, you know, I used to have a job, so you know that's when I learned that stuff. And obviously, working for Collective, you know, I had to draft contracts as well. No, that's not, a lawyer did that, but like I reviewed contracts, and you know, me and the head of development, Phil, you know, we spent a good couple of months kind of reducing the default big square contract, which is, you know, 60 odd pages, down to something a lot more manageable that sort of Joe Blogs could deal with, you know, like, so that I can't really go into it that much, but the contracts were readable. But unfortunately, you know, there is legalese in there. So personally, or Dean, we've got two avenues. So I've got a really good friend who used to be a lawyer for a platform holder, and for anything that I don't recognise, like anything that's new, I just go, yeah, can you just look at this clause and tell me what it means? And he's happy to do that on an ad hoc basis. But for something super serious, yeah, we've got a, it's not retained, we don't pay him every month, but like we've got a relationship with a not just games, but an entertainment legal firm that we can pass stuff over to. Yeah, I was, so the big, we were trying to do a deal in China, and I've never dealt with a Chinese company before. So it was high risk for me, and it's too high that I just didn't want to do it. Like I didn't even want to have a discussion about it. Like sounds like too much hard work. But yeah, I gave it to them, and I mean, let's not beat around the bush. Lawyers aren't cheap. Like, you know, they spend years learning all this stuff, and so quite rightly they charge through the earth. But it was money well spent, because how the deal was, I wouldn't have seen a dime for like years, if ever, if we signed a deal. So yeah, I'm quite miserly with money, but you know, you do realise that you need to spend on certain things to literally just steer you out of trouble. So yeah, and how we found our lawyers was just for recommendations. So we reached out to a couple of games companies, like, oh, who's your lawyer, blah blah blah, and you know, just through word of mouth. So, all right, use these guys, don't use these guys. You know, these folks were great. these were not so great. And I guess, again, off a slight tangent, like I always make a job of trying to speak to studios a bit further down the line than us, because they would have gone through some different problems, and they'd be like, okay, because I know what I need from a lawyer now, but they know what I need from a lawyer in 3 or 4 years' time. So it's just, yeah, it's...
Usually I find in the games business, people are very helpful, very willing to give information, you know?
Yeah, 100%. And I, coming from AAA, like, it took me a long time to get my head around that. Yeah, because it's not how we used to play. So, but it's 100% refreshing, and it helps relieve some of my cynicism, because we're all playing a game. We're all scrabbling for eyeballs, and some of us do it better than others. So when you see all these press releases and these blog posts and stuff, you just, okay, you're in between the lines, think, right, okay, this means that, and try and connect dots and stuff, and coupled with actually asking people, you just get the bigger picture, and you just think, okay, cool. And it just helps you keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. You were saying you've worked hard and you've had times in your life when there's been crunch.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to expand on that? Or the question I've got here is, what's the most difficult situation you've found your studio in?
I've got quite an unpopular opinion on crunch. And that is, I think crunch in a creative industry is sometimes inevitable. What is avoidable is excessive crunch. So, especially when you're in work for hire mode, a company is paying you to deliver, and if something goes wrong internally at the studio, that's not their problem. Obviously, if you've got a good enough relationship, they can change the deadlines. But sometimes they might have bought some retail space. They might have bought some marketing airtime. Like their deadline's hard, and then therefore to catch up, you need to crunch. This is fine. This things like this happen. Or say you're in the prototype period and all of your ideas are rubbish, and you need to go back to the drawing board. Like stuff like that just happens. Excessive crunch is where either the client's messed up or the producer's messed up. And these things happen, but it's at that point you realise it's messed up.
Or the developer.
Yeah. But at that point, you need to rescope and you need to replan. And if any one of those parties takes a decision not to do that, that's when you go into excessive crunch mode. And that is what I don't really agree with.
I mean, it becomes difficult when someone says, it's only for a month.
Yeah.
Every month.
Yeah. So one thing I used to do back when I used to work at Exeter in Oxford is, I mean, it's quite lucky if you're a producer, you need to have that power of foresight and go, you need to work at, you need to realise how the team's performing, if they're on target or different behind. So when we realised that we were behind, we would introduce light crunch. And what that would be is like, okay, we're going to stay behind for 2 hours on a Tuesday and Thursday for 5 weeks until we catch up. Right? So that is super reasonable. Everyone's like, yeah, okay, cool, yeah, we're behind. And obviously you need to be an open producer, like you need to be like, that's the schedule. You can see that, these 2 dates don't line up. You know how much work you have, so let's do it, right? This is all good. And then there's just different variations of that. Like you can see sometimes, what I always try to do is avoid weekends, because you can work hard for 5 days, but if you've got those 2 days to recharge, you can cope, right? You can get back on the wagon. If you start dipping into those weekends, you don't get much recharge time. I think the only hard, fast rule that I had was on my teams anyway, not for the whole company, because my teams was no Sundays because I used to play American football, and no Tuesday nights because we used to play normal football. Apart from that, we could reschedule as much as we wanted. And then so at AutoGene, just through all these lessons that I've had, is we don't do it. I personally do it because it's my company, and there's certain times that I need to do things that if they're not done, I hold up another team member. or there's just opportunities that pop up, like, oh, we need a funding application. The deadline closes next week. You're like, okay, great. Well, I've still got my normal work to do, but now I'll keep going in the evenings to deliver. And then there's another subset that I don't apply this to Crunch, but it's in a similar field. So overtime. So a lot of my friends are just like, no, we only work 10 till 6. We don't, and no one stays late. We turn the power off. Everyone has to leave the office. And again, I don't agree with that because everyone's different. And sometimes people only start cooking the grass about 3 or 4 p.m. So if you go to them at 6 p.m., so right, you've got to stop working now, you can see them like, they're not blinking, they're looking at their monitor, they're doing some amazing work. You just like, all right, you need to let that happen. And you just need to have a culture and a level of trust in the company that that team member knows how far they can push themselves. So, you don't want to see them do that 5 days a week, but if they do that Monday, Tuesday, and they come in late on Wednesday, like, right, good. They're looking after themselves and they're still delivering the work they need to deliver.
Many times I've known coders who prefer to work in the evening when it's a bit quieter and the client's not around and they're not being asked questions the whole time. And I'm working with a bunch of guys in the Ukraine at the moment, and sometimes they'll send me a build at 4 a.m. and I say to them, no, you're supposed to be sleeping now. It's like the tables are turned from how it used to be.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I mean, oh man, I remember sleeping under my desk at work. And in the early days, I had quite a bad commute as well. So that was kind of like a double-edged sword. Like, to avoid the 2-hour drive home, sleeping under the desk was actually preferable. But those days, they should be long gone.
When we were delivering on CD-ROM rather than over the internet, you'd have to wait, it'd be 4 o'clock, you'd be lying on the floor waiting for the builds to compile or the disk to burn.
So that was actually my first, my second job doing the disc burning and those PlayStation 1 discs. Those take 8 hours of burners, and the thing is, like, when you do a submission, like, you'd never get a clean batch. Like 1 or 2 drives would always fail. So you're just like, oh, okay, great.
Yeah,
you've got some couriers sitting there waiting for you to take it off to Liverpool. You're just like, right, okay. Sorry, bud, you got to wait another hour to burn these discs.
Yeah. We used to charge people $3,500 to burn a Goldmaster CD-ROM, and people would arrive. We did it as a sideline in the studio. People would arrive with their hard disk and sit on the sofa and wait, and the burner was about 1,600 quid, but nobody had them,
Yeah. That's a nice little earner.
Dark art, Gradually the price came down, till every PC was bundled with a burner.
The most difficult period for our studio is it's quite now, actually, I'd have to say. We're on that precipice of where income is slowing down. We're still pitching for projects, so what are we now? April, right? So by the summer, if we don't land a project, I'm seriously be like, okay, great. So I've got to stop taking money out of the company myself. Stop paying myself. And we've seriously got to reevaluate like the services that we have to subscribe to. So we're big fans of Atlassian for Confluence and Jira and stuff. Admittedly, we could do without Jira now because we're not active development, but Confluence is massive for us. We don't create massive GDDs up front. We have living portals where with features. Like now I'm just like, okay. And the really frustrating for me, maybe not just about video games, but about business is, you need to spend money to make money. And so tomorrow I'm flying out to Croatia to speak to some publishers and investors, be like, hey, look, it's a game. Any chance you want to sign it? But the problem is there's like hundreds of me. Yeah, exactly. There's hundreds of me doing the same thing. So yeah, or what I say I am looking at ways to kind of diversify the company where we can get sort of like a couple of easy wins and steady the ship a bit, and then maybe look at some longer term goals. Because last year, what's 2016, we had a really good year because we had some agency work, and they kept coming back. It's a really good relationship. But now the clients that they have don't want any digital games. They just want website, social media campaign, job done. So that work dried up. And whilst we did well out of it initially, like 18 months is a long time. So I'd definitely say now. I again, going back to the top of the interview, I'm very grateful that I, caught wind of the film model, and I've used that going forward instead of having, 15 bums on seats, paying stupid rent in London. I'm very grateful to that decision now, and I'm very grateful for the advice that some friends gave me about doing that, because that'd be a very difficult discussion for me to go and speak to 15 people and say, well, hey, after next month, I can't pay you anymore. So
I've had those issues myself, cash flow issues in the studio, and cutting off services and losing people. It's the last place that you want to go, really. And then, but if you can, in whatever form, keep going, then there's always some kind of a breakthrough to be had. I mean, I remember touting a demo around for a year, and I went everywhere, and nobody would take it.
Yeah.
And I think it was back in the day, so it was ECTS, and it was my last chance. And I said to the boys, look, if I don't sign this, we're going to have to can this demo and try and think of something else, because it's not a game that people want. And I saw, I think it was Wanadu had a stand there, and we had a survival horror title, and on their screen they were showing something in the horror genre, and I thought to myself, well, at least they're in the ballpark. And I thought, well, it's the end of the day. I've had enough. I give up. And I thought, well, just go and see them. Because then at least you can say you've done your best, right?
Yeah.
And I went to the stand. The biz dev guy wasn't there. It was a French company. I thought the last thing I want is the following week to try and explain it in pidgin French over the phone. But they gave me the biz dev guy's telephone number, and it turned out he was an English guy who was a Francophile living over there. And I explained the game to him. They came over, and within 8 weeks, they gave me 1.6 million euros to make that game on PS2.
Fantastic.
You're working well into the future. What's the long-term vision?
At the minute, what we're pitching around at the minute is just one game in a 5-project universe. So yeah, I mean, to be able to kickstart that would be great. If this game, does moderately well, it'll take care of the other 2 of the 5. But the last 2 of the 5 are significant. Like I mean, this is why I was speaking to investors, because to raise that kind of money for video games sales alone, it would take me too long. I'd be bored by the end of it. But yes, that's the plan. We hope we can kickstart the universe and then deliver those 5 projects. And then creatively, for me, outside of those 5, I've got another 3 or 4 game ideas, and then I'm done. So,
would you sell the studio, perhaps?
Kind of, yes. So essentially, where I'd want to get with that is once the core 5 are on the path to being done, that's when I'd be looking for someone to, like a studio head, to come in and replace me with day-to-day stuff, so I can start thinking, okay, great. What is my exit? Do I want to get acquired by someone? Do I just want to sell my IP to someone? It's these things, but that exact discussion. I know I need to have that discussion, but for me, it's just kind of a good 3 to 4 years away from me at the moment. But that's kind of where we want to go. I for AutoGene to last beyond that, requires bricks and mortar. It requires bums on seats. It requires, a proper studio going. And I'm a bit sad to say this because I've got a lot of friends at these mid-tier studios. I'm not sure there's going to be space for them, in 5-6 years' time. And obviously, I hope it's a positive thing. I hope that their games are successful and they all splinter off into becoming smaller indies and making their own things, going through the cycle that way. Or they just become so big that, Activision, EA, Ubisoft go, awesome, great. Come join the team. You can make next Assassin's Creed for us. I hope that happens. I just don't want to see a wasteland of broken mid-tier studios just, with nowhere to go.
Yeah, in your career as a producer, when you're working like at Square or working at Microsoft or EA, were you involved in any mergers or acquisitions, or did you see any deals like that happen?
No. So, I mean, EA and Microsoft was super early. I wasn't a producer back then, but we, at a smaller company, we did get close to an acquisition for us being acquired. And back then, I didn't understand why we turned it down. But that's because I didn't know anything about business and I didn't know anything about building something that was yours, and the motivations behind that. So going back in time with the knowledge I had now, at that stage of the business, I probably would have turned it down too. But obviously, that's without my crystal ball of what eventually happened to the studio later. It was horrible. It's just one of those things you see, that's really annoying. But yeah, no. So, as I was saying, so if I was at that studio, if it was my studio at that time, in the future, when I was ready, we've done our projects that we've done creatively, I'm good. You were like, okay, yeah, great, take it, you can have it. The studio was really good. We made some really, really good products. Had a really, really good engine. This was long before Unity turned up. It was a really, really good mobile engine, and it's a shame we could have capitalized on that IP a bit differently if we just thought differently. So.
What's happened to that engine now? Is it something you could pick back up?
So now, no. Like you wouldn't want to. The world's moved on now. That's the wrong way around. Basically, the world's caught up. So back then, it was great. It was we had features that no one publicly had. People were coming to us because of the engine. It was a great time. But now. Now Unity's here. It solves a lot of problems that we were solving, and a lot cheaper. And again, just a segue. So the problem is running your own engine is really hard, and managing it is really hard. And even back then, I wasn't on the core engine team, so I didn't really know much about it. But when I went out to Crytek, I was looking after the R&D team there. Wow, I learned so much. Like that Crytek, what was I there? So it's 15 years old now. I don't know if you can imagine what that code base would look like, and just the technological changes over 15 years and how you shoehorn that into working on new platforms, and how you take good things from games that have used the engine and improved on it back into the engine, and then you're also selling the engine. It's just, it's horrible.
Yeah, I don't need to imagine it. I remember it. I had to put, I was using an engine, and basically we realized it wasn't going to deliver the product.
Right.
So we had to switch engines mid-development, and we switched over to renderware. And I had to put 10 programmers in a black hole for 3 months to turn that around. So it must have been an extraordinary experience there. You've really know your stuff Des, it's just been wonderful chatting with you. I want to wrap it up, but what's the sort of most important things that you've learned, you know, that you could pass on to our audience, to indie developers?
So financially, you just got to keep stuff tight. Like, you know, in the early stages, you don't want to burn too much money making prototypes. Like, you want to come with a couple, but you need to start shipping. You know, you need to work out the whole process. You need to start shipping early. Right now, we are in a very good ecosystem where it's not one and done. Like, you know, and I used to have a bad attitude about this in AAA because, you know, we'd have bugs that we couldn't fix in time to meet our ship date. Like, oh, don't worry, we'll love it in the patch, which is horrible, right? Like, you know, little Timmy gets the game day one, then he's got to sit there and download a 3 gig patch over a 56k internet connection. It's horrible. But, you know, the platforms get better at delivering updates, you know, and mobile is really, really receptive to updates. Like, you know, and what I'm saying, don't release rubbish. You know, it still needs to have a certain level of quality, but just pick your battles. So, you know, choose the hill you want to die on, but you need to ship. That is the most important thing I can say is you need to ship, and because what that does is people who you don't know are seeing your product and thinking, oh, okay, cool, I've got an IP that would be perfect for that. Let's talk to them. And if you never ship, they never see it, and you never get the opportunity, and nothing gets kickstarted. It's been said many times before, but the industry fits in a teacup. If you're an arsehole, like, people will know, people will find out, and it could be someone who works for the dream company you want to go for. You know, you walk and have an interview with them, you know, and that's it. They see your name in the CV, think, oh, okay, oh yeah, I know who you are, and you know, you don't get your dream job. Yeah, you know, the industry's too small for that. Life is too short for that. So yeah, don't be an arsehole. And I guess kind of more sort of like business related stuff is beware of opportunity cost. And it's really, really pertinent right now because obviously the Switch is going big guns, and you know, everyone loves it. And you know, oh, I'm not going to make PC games anymore. I'm going to make Switch games. All the content that's coming on the Switch now is from devs who have got back catalog, and it's the opportunity cost for them is really small. They're like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, we built it in Unity, so we press the make game button. We've got a Switch build. A little bit more involved than that, but obviously it's easier for them than it is for you to be 3 months into your PC project, want to pivot, make a Switch game, especially if you haven't been through the whole platform cycle before. So, you know, you don't know how hard it is to get through their format QA. You don't know all the rules you need to adhere to. Obviously, consoles are more stricter about age ratings, you know, privacy policies, like all these different things that for me, when I first started AutoGene, I was just like, oh, so that's what those people used to do. You know, back when I had a job at a big company, it's like, oh, I've never seen them do anything. It's like, you know, these people had specific jobs for all of these periphery things. And that segues nicely into don't be afraid to ask for help. Like, there's loads of people who've been through the grinder. Some, you know, haven't made it, but are happy to pass on their failings. Some have made it and are happy to pass on their successes and their failings. So, yeah, don't be afraid to ask for help, because there's plenty of people that will give it.
Thank you so much. I mean, this has been it's been so much fun for me, you know, just to hear your experience and hear all the value you bring as an external producer to managing a studio. You know, there are so many lessons that you've learned that you've shared with us today. So thank you so much. It's been a really, really valuable piece of work today.
No, again, thanks for having me. Absolute pleasure, and I've just been super grateful. I've worked for some great companies and been in nice countries. You just think, okay, this is awesome. I wouldn't change it for anything.